The rain hammered the windshield of my beat-up Toyota, each drop a reminder of the life I was leaving behind. I was 24, pregnant, and running from the only man I'd ever loved, Elliot Kane, the alpha CEO whose empire of steel and glass ruled Seattle's skyline. My name is Riley Parker, and by the time the city lights faded in my rearview mirror, I was already a ghost. 3 months ago, I'd been Elliot's assistant, fetching his coffee, scheduling his meetings, and stealing glances at his sharp jawline and storm-gray eyes. He was everything I wasn't: polished, powerful, untouchable. I was just a kid from a small town, scraping by in a city that chewed up dreamers like me. But one late night, when the office was empty and the city hummed below, he'd kissed me. It was reckless, electric, a spark that ignited something neither of us could control. We fell hard, our secret meetings tucked between boardroom deals and midnight takeout. I thought I'd found my place in his world until I saw the pregnancy test's 2 pink lines. Elliot wasn't built for this. A baby. With me. He was a man who controlled everything: stock markets, mergers, his own heart. I couldn't bear the thought of him looking at me with pity or, worse, obligation. So I ran, packed a bag, left a note that said nothing but, "I'm sorry," and drove north until the road ended at a dirt path in the Washington wilderness. The cabin I'd rented was a crumbling relic, but it was mine. No one would find me here. Not even him. The first weeks were quiet. I chopped wood, boiled water from a nearby stream, and tried to ignore the ache in my chest. My belly grew, a soft curve under my flannel shirts, and I whispered to the baby at night, promising a life free from chaos. But the woods weren't as empty as I'd hoped. At night, I heard footsteps circling the cabin, too heavy to be an animal's. Shadows moved beyond the trees, and once, I swore I saw a figure watching from the ridge. Fear crept in, but I told myself it was just the isolation playing tricks. Then, one evening, as I sat by the fire, the door burst open. Elliot stood there, rain-soaked and furious, his tailored coat torn from the brambles. His eyes burned into mine, a storm of hurt and determination. "You're not leaving again," he said, his voice low, unyielding. My heart stopped. He'd found me. I froze, the crackle of the fire the only sound between us. Elliot stepped inside, his presence filling the tiny cabin like a tidal wave. He was still the man I'd fallen for: broad shoulders, dark hair curling at the edges from the rain, and those eyes that could unravel me with a glance. But there was something new, something raw. He wasn't the polished CEO anymore. He was a man who'd torn through the wilderness to find me. How? I managed, my voice barely a whisper. My hands instinctively cradled my belly, shielding the secret I'd kept from him. Elliot's jaw tightened. "You think I wouldn't notice you were gone? You think I wouldn't tear the world apart to find you?" He took a step closer, and I backed against the rough wooden wall. "Riley, you left me a note with 2 words. 2 words. After everything." Guilt twisted in my gut. I'd thought running would protect us both: him from a life he didn't want, me from the rejection I couldn't face. "You don't understand," I said, my voice shaking. "I couldn't stay. Not like this." His eyes dropped to my hands, to the slight swell of my stomach, and his breath caught. "You're pregnant." It wasn't a question. The weight of it hung in the air, heavy as the rain outside. I nodded, tears stinging my eyes. "I didn't want to trap you, Elliot. You. You have a company, a life. I'm nobody. I couldn't ask you to. Stop." His voice was sharp, cutting through my words. He closed the distance between us, his hands hovering near my shoulders, not quite touching. You think I'd let you go because of who I am. Riley, you're everything. My chest ached at his words, but doubt clung to me like damp clothes. You don't mean that. You can't. He laughed, a bitter sound. You have no idea what I've been through these past 3 months. I thought I'd lost you. I thought. His voice broke, and he ran a hand through his wet hair. I hired investigators, tracked your car, followed every lead until I found this place. I've been sleeping in my truck for days, watching this cabin, making sure you were safe. You were the one out there. I whispered, remembering the shadows, the footsteps. Why didn't you just come to me? Because I was terrified, he admitted, his voice raw. Terrified you'd run again. Terrified you didn't want me anymore. The vulnerability in his eyes shattered something inside me. This was Elliot Kane, the man who commanded boardrooms, who never faltered. And yet here he was, stripped bare, standing in a crumbling cabin because of me. I didn't stop wanting you, I said softly. I ran because I love you. His hands finally found me, cupping my face with a gentleness that made my knees weak. Then don't run again, he said. Not from me. Not from us. For a moment, we stood there, the world reduced to the warmth of his touch and the steady rhythm of the rain. But the woods weren't safe, and neither was our story. Something or someone was still out there, watching. And I knew, deep down, that finding each other was only the beginning. The next morning, the cabin felt different with Elliot there. Sunlight streamed through the cracked windows, painting the dusty floor in gold. But the air was thick with unspoken questions. I made coffee weak, instant stuff from a tin I'd found in the cupboard, and handed him a chipped mug. He took it without a word, his eyes scanning the room like he was cataloging every detail of my makeshift life. You've been here alone, he said, not a question but a statement, laced with something like guilt. No phone, no internet. Just you and our baby. The word "our" hit me like a punch. I nodded, stirring my own coffee to avoid his gaze. I thought it was better this way. Safer. Safer. His brow furrowed. Riley, you're in the middle of nowhere. No one would hear you scream out here. The memory of those nighttime footsteps flashed through my mind, and I shivered. I can take care of myself, I said, but the words felt hollow. The truth was, I'd been scared every night, jumping at every creak of the cabin, every rustle in the trees. Elliot set his mug down, the clink loud in the quiet. You don't have to. Not anymore. He reached for my hand, his thumb brushing over my knuckles. I'm here now. And I'm not leaving. I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to. But the world I'd left behind, his world, was one that welcomed people like me. What about your company? I asked. Your board. Your investors. They'll eat you alive if they find out you're tied to someone like me, let alone a baby. Let them try, he said, his voice steel. I built that company from nothing. I can rebuild it if I have to. But I can't rebuild what we have if you keep running. His words were a lifeline, but doubt still gnawed at me. I pulled my hand away, standing to pace the small room. Elliot, you don't get it. I'm not just some assistant anymore. I'm a liability. The press, your competitors, feel turn this into a scandal. And what about the baby? What kind of life can we give them when? A sharp crack outside cut me off. Elliot was on his feet in an instant, his body angled toward the door. Stay here, he said, his voice low and commanding. I grabbed his arm. Don't. It could be nothing. A branch, an animal, or it could be someone, he said, his eyes dark with suspicion. He pulled a small knife from his coat pocket, the blade glinting in the morning light. I've been watching this place for days. Riley, you're not as alone out here as you think. My stomach twisted. What do you mean? He hesitated, then spoke quickly. There's a truck parked a mile down the road. I've seen it move at night, circling the area. Someone's been watching you. Fear clawed at my throat. I thought of the shadows, the footsteps, the feeling of being hunted. Why didn't you tell me? I didn't want to scare you, he said, his voice softening. But I'm here now, and I'm not letting anything happen to you or our child. Before I could respond, another sound, a low, deliberate scrape, came from the porch. Elliot moved like a predator, silent and swift, positioning himself between me and the door. My heart pounded as I grabbed a poker from the fireplace, my hands trembling but ready. The door creaked open, and a figure stepped into the light. Not a stranger, but someone I recognized, Claire, my old roommate from Seattle. Her blonde hair was tangled, her eyes wild with something I couldn't place. Riley, she said, her voice shaking. I've been looking for you. Elliot didn't lower the knife. Who are you? He demanded. Claire, I said, stepping forward despite his warning glance. She's my friend. What are you doing here? Her gaze darted between us, lingering on my belly. I had to make sure you were okay. You disappeared, Riley. No one knew where you went. Her voice cracked, and she took a step closer. But you're not safe here. You need to come back. Back? Elliot's voice was ice. She's not going anywhere. Claire's eyes narrowed, and for the first time, I noticed the way her hands shook, the way she kept glancing over her shoulder. You don't understand, she said. There are people looking for you. Not just him. She nodded at Elliot. People who know about the baby. The air in the cabin turned cold. Elliot's grip on the knife tightened, and I felt the weight of his presence beside me, a shield against whatever was coming. Claire's words echoed in my mind, and I realized the woods weren't just hiding meth, they were hiding secrets I hadn't begun to unravel. Claire's words hung in the air like smoke, thick and impossible to ignore. The cabin, once my sanctuary, now felt like a trap. Elliot's eyes never left her, his body tense, ready to spring. I stepped between them, my heart racing. What do you mean? People know about the baby? I asked, my voice sharper than I intended. Claire's gaze flicked to the window, as if expecting someone to burst through. Riley, you don't get it. You didn't just run from him. She gestured at Elliot, who bristled but stayed silent. You ran from his world. His enemies. People who'd do anything to hurt him. Elliot's voice was low. Dangerous. Who? Exactly. Claire swallowed hard. I don't know their names. But I overheard things when I was still in Seattle, working at that bar near your office. Men in suits. Talking about you. Elliot. About a deal gone wrong. They mentioned Riley. Said he was your weakness. And then, they mentioned a baby. My knees buckled, and I grabbed the edge of the table for support. Elliot was at my side in an instant, his hand steadying me. Why should we trust you? He asked Claire, his voice a growl. You show up here, uninvited, with some story about threats. Because I care about him. Claire snapped, her eyes flashing. I've known Riley longer than you have. When he vanished, I was the one who noticed. I was the one who tracked him here, because I was worried. She turned to me, her expression softening. Riley, I'm not here to scare you. I'm here to warn you. The room spun. I thought running would keep me safe, keep my baby safe. But now, the world I'd fled was closing in, and I didn't know who to trust. Elliot's hand on my arm was an anchor, but even he couldn't protect me from the truth. My disappearance hadn't erased me from his enemy's radar. It had only made me a target. "We need to leave," Elliot said, his voice firm. "This place isn't safe anymore." "No," I said, surprising myself with the strength in my voice. "I'm not running again. Not until we know what's going on." Elliot's eyes searched mine, a storm of emotions flickering across his face: fear, frustration, love. "Riley, if what she's saying is true, staying here is suicide." "Then we figure it out," I said. "Together." Claire shifted uncomfortably. "There's a motel a few miles east. It's off the grid. Cash only. You could lie low there while we sort this out." Elliot's jaw clenched. "We're not going anywhere with you until I know you're not part of this." "Elliot, stop," I said, touching his arm. "She's my friend. She wouldn't hurt me." But even as I said it, doubt crept in. Claire's story made sense, but her nervous glances, her sudden appearance, they didn't add up. I thought of the truck Elliot had seen, the footsteps in the dark. Was Claire really here to help? Or was she leading us into a trap? Before anyone could speak, a low rumble echoed outside the car engine, too close for comfort. Elliot moved to the window, peering through the gap in the curtains. "Black SUV," he muttered. "Tinted windows. It's not local." My heart pounded. "What do we do?" Elliot turned, his face set with determination. "We get out. Now." He grabbed my hand, pulling me toward the back door. Claire followed, her face pale. We slipped into the woods, the trees swallowing us as the rumble grew louder. Branches scratched my arms, and my breath came in sharp gasps. But Elliot's grip never faltered. We moved fast, weaving through the pines until we reached a small clearing. The motel Claire mentioned was our only option, but trust was a luxury we couldn't afford. As we crouched in the shadows, Elliot pulled me close, his lips brushing my ear. "Whatever happens, I'm not losing you again," he whispered. "You and our baby, my family." Tears stung my eyes, but there was no time for words. The SUV's headlights cut through the dusk, and I realized the woods weren't just a hiding place anymore. They were a battlefield. The motel was a squat, neon-lit relic on the edge of nowhere, its sign flickering like a dying star. We'd made it there under the cover of darkness, Elliot leading the way with a quiet intensity that kept my fear at bay. Claire trailed behind, silent since we'd fled the cabin. The room we rented smelled of mildew and regret, but it was a roof, a lock, a moment to breathe. Elliot stood by the window, watching the parking lot through a crack in the blinds. "No one followed us," he said, but his voice was tight, like he didn't quite believe it. I sat on the sagging bed, my hands resting on my belly, feeling the faint flutter of our baby. It was a reminder of why I'd run and why I couldn't keep running. Claire paced the room, her phone clutched in her hand. "I can make some calls," she said. "I know people in Seattle who might know who's after you." "No calls," Elliot snapped. "Not until we know who you're really working for." "Elliot," I said, my voice soft but firm. "She's trying to help." He turned to me, his eyes softening. "I know you trust her, Riley. But I can't take that chance. Not with you. Not with our child." The words "our child" sent a warmth through me, even in this dingy room. I stood, crossing to him, and took his hand. "I know you're scared," I said. "So am I. But we can't do this alone." He pulled me into his arms, his forehead resting against mine. I've spent my life building walls. Riley. Keeping people out. But you broke through. And now I'm terrified of losing you. You won't, I whispered, my lips brushing his. The kiss was soft, desperate, a promise we didn't know if we could keep. A sharp knock at the door shattered the moment. Elliot pushed me behind him, his body a shield. Claire froze, her eyes wide. It's probably just the motel manager, she said, but her voice trembled. Elliot motioned for us to stay back and opened the door a crack. A man stood there, his face half hidden in the shadows of a hoodie. You Elliot Kane? He asked, his voice rough. Who's asking? Elliot's hand tightened on the door. The man didn't answer. Instead, he lunged, a glint of metal flashing in his hand. Elliot moved faster, slamming the door against the man's arm, sending the knife clattering to the ground. Claire screamed, and I grabbed the lamp from the nightstand, swinging it as the man forced his way in. The fight was chaos, Elliot grappling with the intruder, furniture crashing, my heart pounding as I shielded my belly. Claire yanked the man's hoodie, giving Elliot the chance to pin him to the floor. Who sent you? Elliot roared, his knee on the man's chest. The man spat, his eyes wild. You think you can hide? They know about the kid. They'll find you. Elliot's fist connected with the man's jaw, silencing him. I stood frozen, the lamp still in my hands, as Claire dialed 911. The police arrived quickly, hauling the man away, but his words lingered like a poison. They know about the kid. Later, as we sat in the police station, Elliot held my hand, his thumb tracing circles on my skin. Claire had given her statement and left, promising to stay in touch. The cops confirmed the man was a hired thug, linked to a rival company Elliot had outmaneuvered years ago. The threat was real, but for now, it was contained. We can't go back to Seattle, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Not yet. Elliot nodded, his eyes fierce with resolve. Then we start over. Somewhere new. Somewhere safe. Just us. I looked at him, at the man who'd chased me through the woods, who'd fought for me, for our baby. You'd give it all up. I asked. Your company, your life. For you. He smiled, a rare, genuine smile that made my heart ache. In a heartbeat. We left the station as dawn broke, the sky painted in pinks and golds. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time, I wasn't running. I was walking toward something, toward a family, a future, a love that had found me even when I'd tried to hide. And as Elliot's hand found mine, I knew we'd face whatever came next together.